This is a place where, no matter which direction you come from, the final leg of the journey still requires crossing thousands of feet of open ocean. For hours, all you can see below is dark blue water stretching to the horizon. No continent, not a single strip of land nearby. Then, in the middle of that vast emptiness, lush green peaks suddenly rise into view. Towering cliffs wrap around the coastline, while fields of black lava spread across the slopes of volcanoes. This is Hawaii, one of the most isolated inhabited archipelagos on Earth. Formed by volcanoes and still positioned above an active geological hotspot, it is hard to imagine that around 1.4 million people call these islands home. Every day, airplanes and cargo ships continue crossing the ocean to sustain life in a place that was once nothing more than masses of lava in the middle of the sea. So why did people choose to build their lives on these isolated volcanic islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? To understand life in Hawaii, we first have to look at the immense expanse of ocean surrounding this archipelago. Located near the center of the North Pacific Ocean, Hawaii lies about 3,860 kilometers from the coast of California. There are no bridges or roads connecting it to the rest of the United States. Every journey must begin by sea or by air. Most of the population and economic activity are concentrated on 8 main islands, yet each island feels almost like a world of its own. Oahu is the population, economic, and political center, where Honolulu and Waikiki create Hawaii's most modern image. Hawaii Island is the largest and youngest island, and it continues to be reshaped by active volcanoes. Maui depends heavily on tourism, but still has agriculture and rural communities. Kauai is geologically older, carved by wind and rain into canyons, valleys, and towering sea cliffs. Molokai has a slower pace of life and maintains a strong native Hawaiian presence. Lanai has a small population, but its economy is closely tied to luxury tourism. Niihau is privately owned, and access is restricted. Kahoolawe has no permanent residence and is now dedicated to cultural and environmental restoration efforts. Even the climate changes dramatically between islands and from one side of a mountain to another. Winds carry moisture from the ocean, creating dense forests on windward slopes, while the leeward side can be as dry as a semi-desert. You may be surprised to learn that the same archipelago contains rainforests, grasslands, black lava fields, and mountain peaks that are sometimes covered in snow. The distance between the islands makes air travel almost essential for passengers. Goods, meanwhile, depend on cargo ships, barges, and port systems. A container carrying food, fuel, or construction materials may have to cross the Pacific, arrive at the port of Honolulu, and then be shipped to each island before finally reaching local residents. Before we continue, we want to know which country you are watching this video from and what time it is where you live right now? Share your answer in the comments so we can see where around the world this journey is being watched. Now, let's go back millions of years, because to understand why these isolated islands exist in the middle of the Pacific, we have to return to the moment Hawaii began to rise from fire. Hawaii did not emerge all at once. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean lies a geological hotspot, where hot material from inside the Earth continuously rises and pushes through the oceanic crust. While the hotspot remains almost stationary, the Pacific Plate slowly moves northwest. Over millions of years, one volcano became inactive and another formed, creating a chain of islands stretching across the ocean. That is why the Hawaiian Islands grow progressively older toward the northwest. Kauai has endured millions of years of erosion from rain, wind, and flowing water, leaving behind deep canyons and towering sea cliffs. In contrast, Hawaii Island still lies near the hotspot and continues to be built by lava from Kilauea and Mauna Loa, two of the most active volcanoes in the archipelago. That power was clearly demonstrated during Kilauea's 2018 eruption. Lava cut across roads, advanced into residential areas, and forced thousands of people to evacuate. When it reached the ocean, it reshaped the coastline and created entirely new land. But residents of the Big Island do not live in a constant state of panic. The volcanoes are continuously monitored, hazardous zones are mapped, and communities follow alerts and prepare evacuation plans when geological activity increases. On this same island, Mauna Kea rises more than 4,200 meters above sea level. When measured from its base deep beneath the ocean to its summit, the mountain stands more than 10,000 meters tall, surpassing Everest when both are measured from base to summit. The terrain here is so otherworldly that astronauts from the Apollo 13 through Apollo 17 programs were brought to the Big Island to practice geological fieldwork on lava fields before carrying out their missions to the Moon. But fire did not leave behind only destruction. Lava created black sand beaches, rare green sand beaches containing the mineral olivine, lava tubes, and volcanic craters that resemble the landscape of another planet. Over time, volcanic rock weathered into fertile soil, while rainforests, waterfalls, coral reefs, and countless ecosystems gradually developed on land that was once completely barren. Hawaii, therefore, remains a land that is still being created, but behind those beaches and spectacular landscapes, the lives of 1.4 million people are shaped by jobs, bills, traffic, and housing pressures much like those in any modern society. When the first light appears over Oahu, Hawaii wakes up to many completely different rhythms. Visitors begin making their way down to the beach, while hotel employees are already at work preparing rooms and opening restaurants. On the freeway leading into Honolulu, long lines of traffic form during rush hour. Offshore and in the sky, cargo ships and airplanes continue bringing people, food, and supplies to the archipelago. Waikik was once associated with Hawaiian royalty and surfing. Today, The area has become a global center for hotels, shopping, and tourism. High-rise resorts stand along the coastline, but many of the people who support that economy have to live far from work because housing prices in central areas are beyond what they can afford. Life in Hawaii also differs noticeably from island to island. Honolulu has apartment buildings, office towers, and crowded streets. On Hawaii Island, people live in small towns surrounded by lava fields. Maui, Kauai, and Molokai still have farms, coastal villages, and rural communities. Meanwhile, some residential areas must adapt to the risks of volcanoes, drought, or wildfires. Every day, hundreds of thousands of people work in hotels, schools, hospitals, construction sites, farms, and seaports. Fishermen head out to sea early in the morning. Airport and transportation workers maintain the vital connections between the islands. Military personnel, government employees, and tourism workers together form a society far more diverse than the familiar image of a vacation destination. Because housing costs are high, multiple generations often live under one roof, sharing bills and caring for children or older family members. Children grow up surrounded by modern schools, the ocean, sports, local culture, and family gatherings. A weekend might include a fishing trip, a school sports game, an afternoon at the beach, or a large meal with relatives. In Hawaii, ʻohana often extends beyond the immediate family. The concept also includes extended relatives and people who have been connected long enough to share responsibilities. The beach may be only minutes from home, but bills, traffic, work, and housing pressures still shape daily life. And to sustain life in the middle of the ocean, nearly every family depends on an economy supported by tourism, transportation, and ships that continuously cross the Pacific. In Hawaii, every flight carrying tourists that lands sets a chain of jobs in motion across the archipelago. Hotels need employees, restaurants need food, airports need people to keep them operating, and stores, local tours, and cultural performances all depend on the flow of people arriving from outside the islands. Even many farms and small businesses generate income by supplying products to resorts or welcoming visitors directly. Tourism is therefore one of the biggest driving forces behind Hawaii's economy. However, Hawaii's more than 1.4 million residents also work in government, the military, healthcare, education, construction, transportation, real estate, and technology. These industries help keep daily life running when visitor numbers change with the seasons or the global economy faces disruptions. Before tourism became dominant, sugarcane and pineapple once covered vast areas of land. The plantations required an enormous workforce, bringing people from Japan, the Philippines, China, Portugal, Puerto Rico, and many other communities to the archipelago. The legacy of that era remains visible in Hawaii's population, languages, food, and local culture today. Modern agriculture operates on a smaller scale but is more diverse, ranging from Kona coffee, macadamia nuts, and cacao to flowers, tropical fruits, kalo, and farms serving local markets. Many families combine paid employment with small-scale farming or fishing. At Kualoa, an operating cattle ranch also earns additional income from tourism and film production after appearing in numerous famous movies. Cattle ranching is also connected to Paniolo culture, the Hawaiian cowboys who emerged after local people learned horseback riding and cattle management techniques from vaqueros. But nearly every occupation is affected by the island's isolation. Food, cars, fuel, and construction materials must be shipped to ports, transferred to warehouses, and then distributed to stores on each island. That long journey increases the cost of electricity, food, transportation, and home construction. Hawaii still depends significantly on imported fuel, although solar and wind energy are expanding to reduce its reliance on ships crossing the ocean. Tourism generates revenue and thousands of jobs, but large numbers of visitors also place additional pressure on land, housing, transportation, and resources. And to understand why these conflicts have become especially sensitive, we have to return to the history of a kingdom that once existed independently in the middle of the Pacific. Centuries before airports or modern maps existed, Polynesians crossed thousands of kilometers of ocean in double-hulled canoes to reach Hawaii. They navigated using the positions of the stars, the direction of the wind, ocean currents, wave patterns, and the flight paths of seabirds. After centuries of isolation, communities here developed their own agricultural systems, fish ponds, laws, and beliefs, along with hula, oli, and mele to pass knowledge down through generations. The islands were later unified as the Hawaiian Kingdom, but the monarchy was overthrown in 1893. The United States annexed the archipelago in 1898, and Hawaii became the 50th state in 1959. Among Honolulu's high-rise buildings and government offices, Iolani Palace still preserves the memory of that era. It is the only royal palace in the United States and was once home to Hawaii's last monarchs. That history continues to shape debates over land, sovereignty, native Hawaiian rights, and the protection of sacred sites. The Hawaiian language, or Olelo Hawaii, once experienced a severe decline, but is now being revived through language immersion schools, media, and community activities. It also created one of the most tongue-twisting animal names in the United States. The state fish is called the humuhumunukunukuapua, which roughly means the fish with a snout like a pig. Try saying that name quickly 3 times. If you pronounce it correctly on your first attempt, let us know in the comments. Hula, mele, and oli are not simply performances for tourists. They help preserve history, genealogy, and knowledge of the land. Hokulia, the ocean-going canoe navigated using traditional methods, has become a symbol of the revival of that identity. Surfing also has deep roots in the Polynesian world and holds a special place in Hawaiian society, practiced by both ordinary people and the ali'i class. Meanwhile, the ukulele developed from the braginha, an instrument brought by the Portuguese, which Hawaiians then transformed into a musical symbol of their own. At Puhonua or Honaunau, stone walls, house foundations, and ceremonial structures still reveal how communities once organized life under the kapu system. Villages, fish ponds, and farming areas were managed through the ahupua, a system connecting resources from the mountains to the sea. Aloha ʻāina expresses love for and connection to the land. Malama ʻāina is the responsibility to care for the land, while kuleana emphasizes the obligations that come with rights. Native Hawaiian culture must be distinguished from the multicultural local culture that developed through the history of plantations and immigration. Hawaii Creole English, commonly called Pidgin, is one legacy of that cultural exchange. The tension between tradition and development is clearly visible on Mauna Kea. The atmosphere at the summit creates ideal conditions for astronomy, but for many native Hawaiians, this is sacred land connected to genealogy and spiritual life. The debate over observatories therefore raises a larger question. How can science move forward while still respecting culture, the environment, and land stewardship rights? These layers of history do not exist only in palaces or sacred sites. They are also present in kalo fields, earth ovens, and meals where Hawaiian communities continue passing down their identity. A traditional Hawaiian meal often begins in the flooded loai fields, where kalo is tended for months before being harvested. The root is cleaned, cooked, and then pounded into poi, a food with a soft texture that has long held an important place in native Hawaiian life. Kalo provides food while also being connected to stories of origin, genealogy, and the relationship between people and ʻāina. Alongside kalo are fresh fish, limu, wala sweet potatoes, pork, kalo leaves, and a wide variety of local fruits and plants. At large gatherings, food may be prepared in an imu. People dig a pit in the ground, heat stones, carefully wrap the food, and then cover everything to cook slowly for several hours. When the oven is opened, the entire family or community gathers to remove the food and share the meal. Poi, laulau, and fish dishes are therefore closely connected to cooperation and gatherings. However, food in Hawaii today also reflects its multi-ethnic history of immigration. Modern poke, plate lunch, spam musubi, lokomoko, and malasada emerged from the cultural exchange between many communities. Plate lunch especially recalls the plantation era, when workers from Japan, the Philippines, China, Portugal, and many other places brought their own foods and shared them during breaks. Native Hawaiian cuisine and Hawaii's local cuisine are therefore closely connected, but not exactly the same. One originates from native Hawaiian culture, while the other was shaped through generations of living together and exchanging traditions. From farmers' markets and food trucks to family-owned stores and food-based fundraisers, meals remain a way for people to maintain relationships, share resources, and pass down culture. But for ingredients to reach every kitchen across these separated islands, Hawaii needs a network of airplanes, cargo ships, and roads operating almost non-stop. Every morning on Molokai or Lanai, small planes take off for Honolulu, carrying passengers traveling for work, medical care, education, or business. The flight may last only a few dozen minutes, but for residents of the smaller islands, air travel functions much like a long-distance bus service. That is because there are no roads at all between the Hawaiian Islands. The ocean lies between every destination. On Oahu, where most of the population is concentrated, people travel by bus, car, freeway, and the Skyline rail line. On the other islands, homes and towns are more spread out, making cars almost essential. While passengers depend on airplanes, food, fuel, equipment, and construction materials are transported by ship, barge, or cargo plane. Most imported goods arrive at the port of Honolulu before being distributed to the other islands. As a result, a problem at the port, bad weather, or a disruption in transportation can quickly affect prices and the amount of merchandise available on store shelves. Isolation in Hawaii is not an abstract concept. It can be seen in delivery schedules, grocery bills, and how long each family has to wait. Distance also affects access to services. Some residents of smaller islands have to fly to Oahu or Maui to see a specialist. Many young people leave home to attend college or find work, while some professions require employees to travel frequently between the islands. The internet, online education, and remote work are reducing some of that distance, although connection quality and infrastructure in rural areas remain uneven. Some young people return after studying or working elsewhere to become teachers, healthcare workers, farmers, entrepreneurs, or participants in cultural restoration projects. Phones, airplanes, and rail lines now exist alongside wayfinding canoes, kalo fields, and ancient fish ponds. Hawaii is entering the modern world in its own way, but every new connection has yet to resolve the most difficult question: can local people still afford to continue living in their own homeland? For many Hawaii residents, the most immediate threat does not come from an active volcano. It is the question of whether they can still afford to continue living on the islands. Home prices and rents have moved beyond the reach of many working families, while long-term housing must compete with vacation properties and short-term rentals. To reduce costs, multiple generations live under one roof or move to areas farther from work, resulting in longer commutes. Some young people have to leave Hawaii to find housing and economic opportunities on the mainland. This creates a painful paradox. Millions of people dream of moving to or vacationing in Hawaii, while those born here sometimes cannot afford to stay. The 2023 Maui wildfires made this issue even more urgent. Lahaina's recovery is not simply about rebuilding roads and homes. It also raises questions about land ownership, water resources, housing for long-time residents, and who has the right to decide how the community will be rebuilt. For many families, the goal is not only to restore a town, but also to ensure that local people can return. Nature continues to create many other threats. The islands must prepare for volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, flash floods, tsunamis, droughts, and wildfires. Rising sea levels are eroding beaches and threatening coastal roads, homes, and burial grounds with cultural significance. Warming oceans are causing coral bleaching and reducing fish habitats. Hawaii's freshwater supply depends heavily on rainfall and underground aquifers. However, urbanization, agriculture, tourism, and drought are placing additional pressure on these resources. Invasive species are also altering native forests, threatening endemic wildlife, and potentially increasing the risk of fire in some areas. Over-tourism causes traffic congestion, damages trails, and harms coral reefs. It also increases pressure on water supplies, infrastructure, and access to land. Hanauma Bay shows that Hawaii is trying a different approach. After enduring intense pressure from large numbers of visitors, the area introduced a reservation system, access limits, closure days, and an education program to protect the ecosystem. This management approach reflects an important shift. Instead of attracting as many people as possible, Hawaii is gradually paying more attention to how much pressure each place can withstand. Fish ponds and kalo fields are being restored. Projects focused on protecting coral reefs, developing renewable energy, and producing local food are expanding. Some sensitive areas limit visitor numbers, while businesses and community-managed tourism models are receiving more attention. These efforts cannot solve every problem yet, but they show that the people of Hawaii are trying to protect what makes the islands their home. And it is this connection between family, land, culture, and responsibility that explains why many people remain determined to stay. As housing prices continue to rise and the mainland offers more economic opportunities, what still keeps people on these isolated islands in the middle of the Pacific? The answer cannot be found entirely in income, scenery, or the image of a tropical paradise. It lies in the relationship between people, the land, and the community. For many native Hawaiians, ʻāina is not simply real estate that can be bought and sold. The land is part of their genealogy, culture, and a responsibility that must be passed down to future generations. For other local families, Hawaii is where their parents, grandparents, and generations before them have lived, worked, and helped build the community. ʻohana forms a support network that is difficult to replace. Family members care for children and older adults while sharing housing, food, vehicles, and many living expenses. When volcanoes, wildfires, or hurricanes disrupt life, relatives and neighbors are often the first to show up and help one another. The ocean, kalo fields, fishing, and access to nature also provide a quality of life that is difficult to measure in money. What visitors see as a beautiful beach may be a family's fishing ground. A green valley may be ancestral land, a workplace, or a space for practicing cultural traditions. These landscapes hold memories and responsibilities rather than simply serving as backdrops for vacations. Of course, staying has never been an easy choice. Some young people leave the islands to study, find work, or buy a home on the mainland, but they still send money back, visit family, and maintain their connections. Others return to teach the Hawaiian language, restore land and fish ponds, work in agriculture, care for relatives, or build businesses that serve the community. Happiness in Hawaii does not come from the absence of hardship. It comes from having a family to rely on, land to care for, a culture to carry forward, and a place in the community. They stay not because Hawaii is always a paradise, but because this is where their family, memories, identity, and responsibilities all exist together. Hawaii may look like a paradise in the middle of the Pacific, but life here always comes with isolation, high costs, natural disasters, and the struggle to protect land, culture, and community. This is a Hawaii far more complex than the image usually seen on postcards. What detail about life in Hawaii surprised you the most? And would you be willing to live in this isolated paradise if you had to face high prices and dependence on the outside world? Leave your thoughts in the comments and remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next journeys. See you next time.